Hey everyone, we're checking out Telestians, and today we're going to take a look at the map maker or custom scenario setup. If you look down here, it's this button right here. I'm using version 2.0.3, so if you have a more recent version, things might look a little different. If you have an older version, well, you can upgrade for free to at least this version. So go ahead and just do that so you're going to be where we're at. Map maker. All right, so how this works, I don't have like a script here, but I'm gonna go through just kind of all the options. The first thing is with the mouse wheel, you can scroll in and out. So you got 3 levels of zoom, which you can kind of see here on the mini map. But the idea is that we just sort of lay out all the terrain. We'll add castles, we'll add ruins, we'll add temples. We'll set up how many players we want, save this scenario information, and then export the file, and then we'll be able to play it ourselves in the actual game. So up here we have the name of the scenario, and I like to start right away by getting into the scenario button and giving it a name. So in our case, let's call it the Dark Forest. And Jim, you can put in your company name, your name, whatever you want, your alias, and then a short description, right? So I'm not sure what we're gonna do just yet, but I'm gonna, let's say maybe it's like the elves and the undead. And so we can talk about elves breaching, is that how you spell it? The undead forest. And we can come back, I just like this as a placeholder for what I'm doing. All right, so next we want to decide what biome we're at. So there's 4 biomes if you're not already familiar. There's a desert biome, there's the original grasslands biome, there's a hellscape biome, which is like kind of more like lava and these rocks and stuff, and there's a snow biome. So in this case, I'm just going to start with the grasslands. And down here we have a drop down for the different icons we can use. So we have castle, terrain, ruins, and temple. So I'm just going to start with temple. I'm going to scroll here to see exactly what I want to show. Woods, dense woods. So let's do some dense woods. Up here, so this also zooms in and out, but we can use our mouse wheel. And we can also press on the mouse wheel to get this hand to help us like drag and drop the map. I think you can also use, you can use the arrow keys if you kind of want to move left, right, up, down. But again, this is usually where I like to be. Now this is the paintbrush size, so it defaults to just 1 tile. And then we could also do a 3x3 and a 5x5, as you can imagine. So I'll zoom out. Let's just get like a forest going here. And again, I'm keeping this really simple because I just kind of want to look at all the menu buttons and icons with you guys. And so you have an idea of how this works. I'm not going to be perfecting the map, which I do enjoy doing. I'm going to grab some water here to sort of create like a little lake maybe. Got a little something coming in here. And then I'm going to go to regular woods, and you can click through all these. Excuse me, you can click through all these and sort of see what they all look like. But again, I'm just going to go through here real quick. So we'll add some woods. Right. Just do something like this. Cool. Maybe something like that, maybe. All right. And you can select from any of these. So we can do, we have hills, and I'll just go through these real quick, I guess, so you can see at least what they look like. We have jungle. We have dense jungle terrain. Put that up here. And then we also have marsh, so maybe we'll say there's like a marsh area here. Get this 3, there we go. Now, you can right click with the mouse. So I'm just left clicking, you'll figure that out very naturally, but I'm just right clicking to get rid of the terrain and kind of go back to the default. But you can also, depending on the terrain, you can just sort of override it as well. Okay, what else do we got here? With jungles, marsh, mountains. So of course we can add mountains if we want. Put some mountains up against this marsh. And we got mountain peaks. So the mountain peaks, again, these are like, even if you can cross mountains, a lot of times you can't cross mountain peaks. Most things can't. Actually, I don't even know if anything can. So if you're trying to block most units, you would use mountains, but certain flying creatures can go over mountains, and actually certain walking creatures like the Yeti can go through mountains, but they can't go through the mountain peaks. So if you really want to create like a barrier where like, okay, I know there's no troops can come through this area, you'll want to use the mountain peaks. And then we got plains and a road. So we can add a little bit of road here. Maybe we got something coming up, kind of follows the river to a certain extent as we head over here to the undead side of things. Something like that. Let's see what happens. All right, again, just kind of going through this pretty quickly to get something placed. All right, so we're at terrain. Now I'm gonna save the scenario. I'm gonna hit the menu button down here, save scenario. I'll just call it, it says here, spaces and file names will automatically convert it to dashes. Okay, so we'll just call it the dark forest. Save. Okay, so now I know it's saved because up here it shows it, and it uses this like Telestians type save something, I don't know, but that's the file format so that you know it's saved. You don't really need to worry about this too much. It's just sort of like an internal thing for the game itself, kind of like .html or .json or something like that, if you know about that. All right, again, I'm going to stick with grassland. Now here's what's kind of cool. When you create your map, you can flip it like back and forth, so we can see what it would look like if it was a desert biome. We can see what it would look like as a hellscape, and same thing for snowlands. So that's kind of cool. Like once you kind of get to the point of you made everything, you can just flip it around. But I'm willing to bet you probably already have an idea of what biome you're going to be in when you start building it. Let's go to castles. So before I jump into castles, I'm actually going to go to this button right here called players, so we can set who our players are. So I can change the color. Let's see, so if you edit a player, all castle ownerships will need to be reassigned. Yeah, so I like to do the players first because of what it just says right here. Like, you'll have to go do some extra work if you change the players later. One thing to note, you can set the colors right here. Player can change the human and computer and color, but the factions are locked. So what that means is, if I have 4 players, when I create this scenario, and if I want to play it or someone else wants to play it, there will always be these 4 players. It won't change anything. However, the player can choose who they want to be. So they might want to be player 4 or player 1, depending on what you're doing, or they could be all human. So that just to note, and also the same thing, they can change the color. I usually just choose a color there anyway for default, like elves, I like to be green, undead, I like to be black. Maybe we should have like one other player in here, maybe the orcs. We'll just keep them brown. We'll make them computer as well. So with that, elves, human, save. Excuse me. All right, so castles. So let's start with, where is our elf castle going to be? So we will have, if we scroll down here, we have elves fort, a fortress, a stronghold, or raised. So raised, the castle's destroyed, doesn't, you can't use it, can't do anything like that with it. So this one's, I guess, nice aesthetically, but won't really serve you any purpose to go. Stronghold is the highest level castle. That's usually what the game starts you with. Like, you always start with the highest level. You don't have to do that for your scenario, but in our case, I think we should. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to put the elf castle right there. And what I'm going to do, just for the fun of it here, is go back to terrain real quick, add some woods, and maybe we'll kind of say the idea is that like the elves have been sort of run out of their woods by the undead, and it's like we have to go back into the woods, right, to take over. So then we'll go down to undead. I'm going to give a stronghold as well for them to start. And I'll just put them somewhere deep. Maybe I'll put them like across the river right here. You know, okay, we took over this part. And then we also have the orcs. So I'm going to just keep in the same format. I'm going to put them, I'll put them over here, like in the, put them over here. Okay. And I'm going to create some hills over here for them real quick. Just kind of say that they're in the area. They sort of realize that, gosh, the elves have like lost a lot of their power and influence from the undead, and maybe they're going to try to cause a bit of issues. So anyway, we'll do something like this. This is fine. Okay, so now with the castles, you got your 3 main castles, right? And I like to save. Just keep saving so that you don't lose any progress. Now what you want to do is you want to go to this where it says neutral. And neutral are those castles that there'll be some people there, but that, you know, isn't assigned to the orcs, isn't assigned to the elves, and aren't assigned to the undead. Fort again is the easiest. So sometimes I like to just have like a easy fort here, you know, for you to take over. Maybe we have a couple, maybe we have one up here in the woods, and maybe we, you know, kind of give one that's sort of close to the orcs up here, and maybe we give one that's kind of easy to the undead over here. And then, you know, we can do a stronghold as well for them, but let's just throw a couple castles up. And then depending on how you want to play the game, you know, create the game, you have to think about it. Like in the strategy and tactics for a custom map maker sort of scenario is for a different video. This one, again, I just want to show you the tools, but you can think about stuff like, you know, lean more of the easy castles towards the player that you want to have the advantage in the game. So I could kind of surround the elves with some neutral castles, and then like the undead wouldn't have as much, right? So they'd probably be less powerful of a foe because they'd really only have 2 or 3 castles they'd reach. But we can put a few castles up here, right? Maybe one down here. That would make the orcs a bit more powerful, right? Because most likely they're the one that's going to take this one over, and we'd have to work to handle that. Now the next thing I want to go through is ruins, and you have all the options for every ruin, you know, in the game here. So you can take something like a tower. We could put it like right here, you know. We could take, let's see, we're in the woods, so maybe we have like a lookout tree. What else do they have? A grotto. How about a grove? Might be kind of cool. You know, maybe you make something like over here, little grove. But I'm going to stick with just a couple because we'll get back to that again. And then let's look at temples. Temples again is where you get quests and where you get blessed. And again, we're going to give the advantage to the elves. And we're going to say, hey, like this is your, you know, this is your land. So we could put a cathedral, all these things, tabernacle. Maybe we just put a, maybe we put a blisk here, just right across the water. Maybe it's right here in the swamp, or not the swamp. It will knock it out here, the swamp. And we can have it there. So this probably wouldn't be the best setup because, you know, you're depending on how you want this to be used. If you wanted it to be used a lot in this scenario, you'd be sending, you know, people across the water and back over the water, across the water. You may just want to land bridge that. But I'm just going to leave it there for our purposes. Okay, so now that we have everything placed, we're happy. We've figured out like the balances. Who's going to have, you know, the strength? Are we equally strong with all our players? And we now can set up each thing. So we'll start with the castles button here. By the way, this button right here, it does like a refresh of the map. So like if you needed to refresh the tiles, but most of the time it auto tiles really well. But if you feel like the tiles are looking funky, hit this like refresh button. Castles. Okay, so with castles, we can go through, this closes it out, this goes through all the castles, and we can set them all up. So let's start with the elves. First thing we can do is we can create a name. So you can, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So we'll just leave everything default, but you can do that, have some custom scenarios. We already chose the castle difficulty, so that doesn't change, not difficulty, but level. We can assign who it goes to. We're going to say that it's to the elves. I will give it a high income, meaning it gets more gold per turn, or maybe it gets no gold per turn. And then lastly, we'll set it as the capital. And then we're going to save it. And one thing, like this is a big gotcha. This castle itself, this data has been saved. So even though you can kind of bounce around with these, it doesn't save all your changes at once. You can also delete the castle. So let's go to the next one. So this is just a default name. We'll say it's average income. And I usually leave these neutral things default, but for sure, if you have a custom scenario that you want, like certain castles that your guys are taking over, having these names like specified really helps to the immersivity of it. So neutral castle, neutral castle, neutral castle, neutral castle. Okay, grindbone. We're going to switch that to the orcs. We're going to give it a high income as well because it's their capital. I'm going to save it. Again, we're just saving this specific castle. And then undead, same thing. We assign it to the undead. We're going to give it a high income and make it the capital. And we'll save it. And that should be it, I think. Neutral, neutral, and back to the elves. Okay, so close that. Let's go to the ruins. Same sort of setup, okay? And same thing. You're only, when you save the button, it's only for this one ruin, even though I can switch to both of them. So here we have a tower. Now, again, name it so that it fits your scenario, right? You can create 3 different levels, okay? So in each level, so we're at level 1, we can select allies, monsters, or treasure. So if it's treasure, what happens is the game just looks at this as a level 1 ruin, and it will create like a amount of treasure that's correct, right? So maybe it'll be like 300 gold pieces or something like that. And then if you do a level 3, it will just automatically create a treasure for that. Maybe it's 1,500 gold pieces or something like that. And the same for all these. So if you want this one to give the player allies, and you set it to level 3, it's going to give them more powerful allies. And if you give them a level 1, it will give them weaker allies. And again, same for monsters. Level 1 monsters, or if you do level 3, it will give you really hard monsters to fight. But where this game really shines is that you can set it manually. And again, you can choose all these options, right? I can choose allies, gold, or anything. So starting with treasure, because that's the easiest, I can literally say like, hey, you're going to get 9,000 gold pieces at this thing, right? And this, again, really goes well for where you might be placing these temples. And, I want it close to the elves, and I want them to have a whole bunch of gold to start off with. You can use something like that. I'd love to get into strategy with like how to make this map maker, but again, I'm just trying to do the buttons here and how it works. Monsters. So we can select the monsters. I mean, you have access to all the monsters here. Ancient dragons, ancient vampires, gorgons, harpies, phoenixes, right? Tarask, werewolf. So if we want werewolves, we can set up to 16 werewolves. You can see that down there. So maybe I want 6 werewolves. Then you set the reward. So gosh, I want, and you can choose from any of these. I mean, it's so cool. So maybe I want gauntlets, chest guard. Maybe I want a ring, a potion, a longbow, right? A tomahawk. I mean, any of these things that you want. Maybe we want plate mail, and then we can specify what it gives you. Does it give you 1 hit point, 2 hit points, 3 hit points, right? Same thing with these relics, like the cloak. You can say, does it give me immunity? For boots, how fast of a bonus speed do I get? So super cool. I'm just going to stay with plate mail. Let's say it gives you +2. It gives you a default name, primordial plate mail, but you can change it to whatever you want. Saving it. I'm saving it for this specific ruin. We go to the grove. We're going to say this one's allies. I'm going to put level 3, just some really cool allies. I don't know what it's going to be, but that will be there. Now I'm going to go back to the menu, save it, just because we've been working on it. So we got castles done, ruins, temples. Temples, same thing. We can call it what we want. Maybe we call it like the Elven obelisk. And right now it looks like the quest is auto-generated. It kind of makes me wonder like if eventually you'd be able to create your own quest, which would be amazing. But for now, everything's just sort of default besides you being able to change the name. So we'll save it, close. All right, so we are almost done now. We got the players. So we're good there. Let's take a look at scenario. Again, you can update the description at this point. You could also make notes about like, you know, your website or whatever. This is what people will see when they play your scenario in the game. So if you're like, hey, I got more, you know, scenarios at this website, check it out, you know, or you can reach me at this email address. This is where you could put that information. This help button, we hit most of this stuff, but it tells you almost everything you need to know. So it talks about clicking, escape keys. So we didn't do that. If I hit escape, oh, I don't want to do that. It'll take me to the main menu. But if I press the letter M, you can get a quick look at the world map. If you want it to be small, you know, you just put a lot of water tiles around it, creates an island or smaller islands. Let's see, we talked about castles. Neutral castles will have their defenders like automatically created based on castle level. We talk about ruins, temples, players, the scenario, and this is kind of where we're going to next, loading and saving scenarios. So we already talked about saving a scenario, that's this. If you go to menu, this is saving scenario. So we can save it, call it the Dark Forest. We go to menu, we can load a scenario. Here's all your scenarios, you could load it and load up the Dark Forest. We can create a new scenario and we can exit, obviously. So here's kind of the final thing. When you're all done with your scenario and you're ready to play it, you can always play your scenario first just to test it and make sure everything works as good as you want before you share it with people, right? That's probably a good idea. So if you click export scenario, what happens is you kind of get this checklist of like, hey, here's all this stuff, like, did you do this? And then it tells you exactly where it's going to save. So in this computer, it's going to be in my C drive, users, bow, desktop, and it'll be right there on the desktop. This is the default area just so you can find it and then put it where you want. So we're going to verify it. So scenario details verified, they found one. So great, so this tells you exactly what we have, right? So one temple was found, verified, meaning everything's good. Ruin details, 2 were found, they were verified. We got 10 castles. One or more players is missing a capital castle. So let's see what's going on, because I do think we said everything there. Let's see, so here's the capital location for player 1. And, okay, so for whatever reason, maybe I didn't click orcs. Let me save that. Let's see. Interesting, I think it's not saving it. I'm not sure why I didn't save it, because I could have sworn we changed that. Maybe there's a small little bug or something going on, but it looks like it's there now. Let's go ahead and export again. Cool. All right, so everything was verified. Your scenario was successfully exported to the desktop. Okay, so now what happens is I'm going to go ahead and exit to the main menu. When you play the game now, right, so what you do is you take that file and you would drag it into your scenario folder, which I can leave a comment there in the description below of kind of like how to do that. But once you get that, you'll click on the new game, and then under game map, you will see the Dark Forest listed right here. In this case, there's a tutorial that the game comes with and Telestia, but it'll be a similar thing, right? It'll look kind of like this, where it will show your description of the game that they're about to play the scenario, and then of course you, the author, and then it will show everything like this. And again, so the faction will be locked, but like I could switch up, like I want these human players, and I can switch the colors and stuff like that. And then you just start the game and you're good to go. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that, give you like a real quick understanding of how the map maker works. You know, if it makes sense, I can definitely make another video like strategy wise about like how to make a good custom scenario, but I imagine a lot of you already have like an idea of the custom scenario and sort of world that you want to create to play yourself or play with your friends, family, or share with others. And anyway, I hope that was helpful. If it was, please leave a like. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one.